Final Fantasy is a video game franchise that, frankly, needs no introduction. The series built Square's reputation in the late 80s and 90s for making huge, genre-defining video games, culminating in the release of Final Fantasy VII, one of the most important JRPGs of all time. Despite that, Square never bothered to make a sequel to their breakout hit, at least not right away. Final Fantasy was a franchise where every entry was a self-contained story, and they showed no signs of breaking away from that tradition. That all changed with Final Fantasy X, no doubt thanks to the PlayStation 2's capability for higher graphical fidelity, as well as the series' growing penchant for impressively rendered cutscenes. The game was so popular that Square almost immediately released a follow-up in Final Fantasy X-2, a first for the franchise. In retrospect, the release of X-2 opened the floodgates for all kinds of Final Fantasy spin-ups and follow-ups, making it a rather important entry at the time. Having said that, I never actually played either of these games when they came out. I only really managed to play Final Fantasy X a few years ago thanks to the HD remaster, and I honestly loved it. It was very different from what I assumed it to be just from what I'd seen from the memes and out-of-context clips. What I thought was a rather jovial and laid-back game was actually rather somber and melancholy. Its story is strongly centered around the themes of letting go and getting over those that you've lost, and it made for a surprisingly emotional experience. I'm not saying it never had its silly moments, but its dramatic moments are surprisingly compelling, and X is now one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. I like playing Final Fantasy X so much that I decided to jump into the sequel right away. That turned out to be a bad idea, at least for me, because I was so put off by the difference in vibe, atmosphere, and even gameplay that I sort of just dropped it. Now, I've come around on the game, especially after giving it another try recently, but I think it's hard to deny that despite being very closely related, these two games could not be more different. Easily one of the most important aspects of Final Fantasy X is its ambience. Spira is a very somber and melancholy world, fitting considering it's constantly on the brink of oblivion. Now, of course there's moments of levity, and Tidus is a very goofy and boisterous protagonist, but even he has his moments of moody thoughtfulness, what with his memories of his abusive father and rough childhood. The story of Final Fantasy X, as cheesy as it is, has a lot of emotional depth to it, which really made it stand out to me when I played it. In comparison, Final Fantasy X-2 is the complete opposite in both tone and atmosphere. I haven't talked yet about how much music helps to sell the ambience in Final Fantasy X, but there's no place where it's more obvious than the opening scenes of both games. Tazanarkan accompanies FF10's opening scene, and it's a quiet, plaintive melody with just piano that really gives off that sense of sorrow. In comparison, Real Emotion is this poppy, energetic dance number that comes in with the same energy as some late 90s MTV music video. It's a massive contrast, and while it's not bad, you can see how I was taken by surprise. Now, of course, X-2 also is not all silly, lighthearted adventures. The game also has its share of quiet and introspective moments, though they're certainly a bit more spaced out in comparison. Things have changed a lot between the two games, and there are factions and political conflicts happening that make the game more than just a lively romp through Spira. Even so, the somber moodiness of the first game is completely gone, whether it be the ambience, the music, or in the characters themselves. Of course, aesthetics aren't the only thing that make these two games stand apart. They also play pretty differently as well. As much as I love Final Fantasy X, for example, one thing I did not enjoy was its excessively linear design. A lot of the game is running down hallways disguised as massive set pieces, and you don't really get any freedom until you're near the end of your journey. In comparison, X-2 gives you the freedom to go wherever you want right from the start. The developers must have realized that having to rediscover all the places you've already been to in X would have been tedious, so they skipped all that in favor of a more non-linear adventure. That's not the only difference. In X, characters eschewed the standard level up system for the more unique sphere grid mechanic, which allowed you to develop each party member however you like. X-2 gets a little more traditional by not only bringing back standard level ups, but also the classic Final Fantasy job system by the way of dress spheres. There's still some freedom in character development and build, but overall the way characters grow is a little more streamlined. Even the way battle works is different, with X's classic turn-based combat giving way to X-2's more contemporary ATB-based system. I'm sure you get the point by now, but I should stress that me pointing out the differences between X and X-2 is not my way of saying that X-2 is a bad game. Yes, I did get put off by the changes enough once upon a time, but the second time around, I've come to realize that I appreciate the game because of its differences rather than despite them. Spira in X-2 is a much more peaceful and jovial place than it was in X, so the changes in atmosphere and ambience are a given. Unlike X, which focused more on the summoner's journey and defeating Sin, 10-2 takes its time, expanding on the world created by its predecessor while adding more content and information. That's what I really think a sequel should be, something that expands on what came before. Yeah, 10-2 is different, but if I thought about it a little more when I first played it, I would have realized sooner that there's not much to gain from a sequel that felt exactly like the original. 10-2 keeps its identity because of what makes it unique, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's like seeing two sides of Spira, and in that way, these two games that couldn't be more different end up complementing each other very well. Thanks for watching. I still have some issues with 10-2, but at the end of the day, I think it does very well as a companion to its original. I still hold 10 as the better game, but which one do you guys prefer? I'd love to hear your opinions about it in the comments. Subscribe if you want to see more of my videos, and I'll see you next time.